My name is Dan Kornhauser,
And my name is Bobby Hunt.
and thank you guys for tuning in to Shoot the J. Shoot it!
Shoot it.
Bob and I are here back as we are every Tuesday to talk about all things NBA. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Before we get going, because we are ready, I want to remind everybody that The Grueling Truth and this show is powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for sportsbook and casino sites. Head on over to betting.net. So, Bob, every time we do this show, the NBA seems to be in a different place, and our team seems to be in a different place. However, the one thing that's constant around the NBA these days is COVID running rampant through the league. No matter the team, good or bad, no matter the player, from superstars to G League guys, D League guys, no one's safe. The rosters have been expanded. They got special rules because of COVID. It's getting crazy. But the protocols have changed. So that gives us some hope.
It's about time. They finally did change it. What is it, 5 or 6 days now? If you're asymptomatic, you can come back. They need to do this. It's just we have to live through it. I know you thought maybe there could be a shutdown. Maybe there will be if it just continues like crazy, or we get a freaking another variant, get through the whole Greek alphabet or whatever it is by the time we're done with this, whenever that might be. But Omicron surging, and pretty much every day a new player going into health and safety protocols. We're in our fantasy basketball league with 10-teamer, and pretty much everyone is hemorrhaging players. So there's really no one at a disadvantage. Everyone's on equal footing. Everyone seems to have at least 4 players out right now. It's just been insane.
And yes, to touch on what you mentioned about the protocols being changed. So basically the NBA came out and said that isolation periods for players who test positive is down to 6 days instead of what had been 10. And I think it's in line with what the CDC has done, coming out and said, I think it's if you're vaccinated or you're asymptomatic or something like that, but you test positive, it's from 10 days in isolation, I think, to 5 now. So it's pretty much in line, and it is down to 6 days instead of 10, assuming those players are asymptomatic and meet other testing standards and whatever. That was in effect recent as yesterday. So we have some light on the horizon, I guess, when it comes to this sort of stuff, because like you said, every day more players, different guys, different teams are getting players put on there. Some other names recently, Draymond Green has entered health and safety protocols. The Cavs' point guard, Garland, entered protocols as well, just as Mobley exits and Mobley is back to play. Bogdanovich for the Hawks is one of like 12 Hawks players who are in the safety protocol as of now. So it's getting crazy. And while some teams are losing guys daily, seemingly, others, like the Nets, are getting players back at the right time. KD, Kyrie, LaMarcus Aldridge, all clear the safety protocols. They're all eligible to come back. We're not sure exactly when we'll see Kyrie. He needs to get his fitness up to standard. I'm sure he's going to go through practices and stuff like that, on the road, because he still can't practice with the team in New York. But he'll be back with the team. He'll be back practicing, doing NBA stuff, getting back in shape. So we'll see him sooner than later, I'm sure.
Yeah, which is a big surprise because honestly, when we talked about it, I think 2 weeks ago on one of the previous podcasts, we didn't really see that he was really going to come back by the end of the year. And that clearly changed. We touched last week saying, well, Nets need him now. They changed their minds. Hey, everyone's entitled to change their mind. It just really sucks when they make it seem like they were the line in the sand and saying you have to be vaccinated or you're not going to play, but still they were paying him. So whatever, I guess they figure at least we'll get half of him is better than none of him. So you get him to play in the road games, and we'll have to just wait and see. They're cruising. They're number 1 in the East right now. I think they're up 2 games on the Chicago Bulls in terms of being the number 1 seed.
1.5.
Yeah, and okay, 1.5. So they're in great shape, and they're getting one of the best players in the NBA back soon. I would imagine it shouldn't take any more than a month. Yes, he'll have to get back in basketball shape, but I imagine as much as like we love to crap on Kyrie and give him hell, and a lot of other people too. We're not the only ones. I do think he's a guy who does care about basketball, cares about staying in shape. I don't think he's like Zion Williamson and eating Big Macs and quarter pounders every day. But
Legend.
I think he'll get in shape soon, and I would say probably be. I don't think they've given a timetable, but I would say he'll be back in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I think that's reasonable.
Well, I mean, I'm just reading up on it now, and it looks like Brooklyn's next road game is January 5th when it travels to play the Indiana Pacers. So maybe we'll see him as sometime, maybe the week after that, second week in January or third week in January. But over the past week, James Harden, Bruce Brown, Paul Millsap, James Johnson, a couple other guys, were all listed out because of the protocols, along with Aldridge, Irving, Durant. Harden's back. He's big. He came back on Christmas Day. And as we just been saying, Durant's coming back. He'll be back a lot sooner than, like you just said, Kyrie. So the Nets are good, getting the band back together at the right time. And yes, they are in first place in the East, but the East, I expect the East to stay tough and get tougher down the stretch because the Nets are legit. We know the Bucks are going to be one of those teams that are going to be there at the end. Chicago looks great. DeMar DeRozan's an MVP candidate with the way he's playing so far this season. The Heat should be tough. We're talking about a team that was just in the finals just a couple of years ago. And you still got to worry about teams like Philadelphia if they're healthy, Boston if they get their act together. But as I'm going down this list, Bob, I see the Knicks. I see the Knicks at 15 and 18. I see them in the 11 seed, right behind the Raptors. And I am disgusted because I want this team to be useful. I want this team to be right. But I know they're butt, and I know they've been inconsistent, and I know they got a lot of work to do. But I just can't help myself. I don't know. Do I like the pain, Bob? That I get excited and that I get hopeful? Or what? What is it, man? I can't put my finger on it. I hate it.
Well,
But I
you're
love
still
it.
a fan. I think even as negative as you were last year, which you were honestly to me more negative last year, even though they were having so much success. Now, granted, it was a shortened season by 10 games, and you wanted to more so just tear it down and suck, which part of me understood, but another part of me definitely disagreed. Miserable, and we see how it is with our football teams and how just awful it is. It's hard to watch. At least the Knicks are watchable for the first time. Well, starting last year, they were watchable for the first time in damn near a decade, at least since that year Carmelo brought them to a number 2 seed along with Stoudemire and J.R. Smith and that whole crew. But they're still hovering around there. So they're still in the playoff mix. Right now, they're not. They're 11th, but it's not like a lot of games separate the rest of the teams. They're 2 games back of the 6th seed where they currently are. So there's a whole logjam there. I think everyone agrees that the best teams in the East are the 4 that are at the top right now. That's the Bucks, the Nets, in no order. Bucks, Nets, Bulls, and Heat. You expect the Sixers to still be good, but we know Ben Simmons isn't there right now. So you look at the Knicks and you say, all right, they're still in the mix, and all games that they have coming up is really what's going to make or break their season, in my opinion, because we're already at over 30 games for every team, and they have a lot of cupcakes on their schedule coming up.
Yep.
Now, they do play the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight. They're playing right now in Minnesota. So that's a difficult game. Minnesota's playing a little bit better than maybe people expected. They're not in the playoffs right now, but they're in that mix, kind of like the Knicks, where they could make it. They're not far out. Look at me.
Nah, the Knicks got to beat these guys. There's no cat and there's
Exactly.
no ant. There's no ant. So you gotta beat these clowns, this skeleton squad. And you don't gotta beat them by 20, but they gotta win by 10 minimum. Randall's got to show more aggression, like we've been waiting for. I know Tibbs has been talking about it. He wants this man to be more aggressive. And They're up 7 at the moment. It's in the tail end of the first quarter, and I hope that number keeps rising, because anything less would be a disappointment. And they got to win the next game against the Pistons. The Pistons are the worst team in the league. They got like 4 wins or something. They got to beat OKC. They got to beat OKC. I don't care about.
I don't care, Shea. I don't care. Shea can go for 40. Let him get his, but win.
Yep. Let him get his. Exactly.
We didn't get to it really last week. But it just didn't work out. We didn't get to it, so it's fine. But basically, I looked over their schedule for the next 30 days, and they played, I think, 16 games, and pretty much all but I think 1 or 2 of them were against under 500. So you mentioned the next coming games, Pistons are dreadful. The worst team in the league, 5-27. They suck. They're just awful. The Thunder, I know they play the Raptors soon. They play the Pacers. They play the Celtics twice, which is still a tough game. Don't get me wrong. But the Celtics themselves are in the same position as the Knicks, where they've been underachieving and disappointing. And I think Tatum probably would be back at that point for those games against the Knicks. But if they were able to catch him while he's out, that would be a big help, because right now the Celtics themselves are dealing with a lot of COVID illnesses as well. But those are some winnable games. And this is a stretch where there's so many teams that are either right there with them that they need to pass, or teams that are just awful, like the Pistons and Thunder. They need to rack up W's. This is where they need to get on a hot streak. They don't necessarily need to win 10 in a row, but yeah, they should be going 7-3, 8-2, whatever. Right now, they've been 4-6 in their last 10. That can't keep happening. And you're right. Randall is the key. When we talked more in depth about them, one of the first 2 podcasts that we did, I was saying, and I mean, you agreed, Randall's got to be more aggressive. They're going to go as far as he takes them. Now, he's not the alpha on a championship team. They're clearly not one of the best teams at East, but they should still be a playoff team. Lose just because you lost Reggie Bullock and who else did they lose? I'm not counting guys like Frank Ntilikina, and that doesn't matter. There's one other piece that was in their rotation that was pretty important to them last year that they lost, but for the most part, they brought back the same team. Evan Fournier should be an upgrade. Kemba Walker should be an upgrade. And at the same time, even though Kemba's been playing a lot better. Payton? Oh, no, it can't be Elf Payton. Yeah, it definitely would not be Elfrid Payton. I think I might go with Frank Ntilikina over him, but both players aren't that useful. I think Reggie Bullock would help. Not that he's some lights out 3-and-D guy for the Mavericks, but he did fit well with this team. He fit well with that New York identity and did what they needed him to do. And I think he is a key reason why their defense hasn't been quite as good. He was a starter last year. He did get around 30 minutes per game. So they have missed a player like that, but as much as Fournier and Walker have to step up, and Walker has been playing really well since he got back in the rotation, mainly because of the COVID-19 problems that the Knicks had. But Randall's, of course, the key. He's been shooting pretty terribly for the last pretty much most of the season. His 3-point percentage is way down, but he's just got to be more aggressive. He's still got to take those shots. He has done a little better job recently of doing that, and he's just got to keep it up. He's got to be aggressive and really kind of be at least 90% of what he was last year when he had a great breakout campaign and was the most improved player in the league.
Before we keep going, I want to remind everybody that we are powered by betting.net, your top sportsbook comparison site. Betting.net offers extensive reviews on the best sports books out there. So head on over to betting.net. And as far as the Knicks go, of their next 15 games after the ones that you mentioned, after the back-to-backs against Boston, it's San Antonio, Dallas, Atlanta, Charlotte, Minnesota again, New Orleans, the Clippers, and then the Cavs. Of their next 15 games, including tonight's against Minnesota, I expect no less than 12 wins. Unless, of course, the Knicks get hit by COVID and everybody's out. I expect 12 wins, no tomfoolery. Drop a game to the Cavs late. Drop maybe to the Hawks if Trey and everybody's there playing is healthy. Drop one of those to the Celtics. That's it. Win 12 games, make up ground, reestablish your girth, because then after that 15-game streak, you're playing the Heat in Miami, you're at Milwaukee, and you're going to be disgusted if you only won like 8 of those 15 before playing those 2 playoff contenders, championship contending teams.
Well, and one thing I am scared of is potentially Julius Randle going on the COVID-19 list. He hasn't yet. A bunch of other Knicks have. And you feel like most of the stars in the league have gone on the list. I think maybe
Mhm.
Joker hasn't quite yet. Randall. So like those all-star level players, obviously Jokic is in another stratosphere from Julius Randle. But basically, we've seen pretty much almost every team's best player land on the COVID-19 reserve list. Now, fortunately, if it does happen to Randall, the rules have changed, so maybe he could be back quicker. But that's one
Yeah.
thing I definitely am concerned about because regardless of how much he's struggled, he's still clearly the best player on the team.
Oh, that goes without saying, which is also disappointing to say out loud because Julius Randle should not be your best player on a playoff team. But I digress. Let's jump over to the West for a hot second, Bob, because we've been spending a lot of time in the East, and understandably so. That's where we're at. We're in New York. We got to talk Brooklyn, best team in the East. Got to talk Knicks because we're fans. And I don't want to forget about the West, okay, because the West is crazy. They've got three of the best teams, maybe three of the top 5 teams in the league right now in Golden State, Phoenix, and Utah. No one's talking about Utah. I picked them as my representative for the West in the preseason to go to the finals. So that's how highly I think of them. And they're currently in the 3 spot at 24-9. Phoenix is second, 26-7, and Golden State's 27-6 on a 3-game winning streak. But as I go down the list, I see some couple disappointing teams. And they both happen to reside in LA. And I only bring up one of those LA teams. One of them is obvious. It's the Lakers. But I only bring up the Clippers because they are currently sitting in the 6th slot at 17-17. But they've lost 2 straight games, and they just lost Paul George. Huge loss. Bob, do you have any more info on his injury or how long he's going to be out for?
I remember it saying 3 to 4 weeks. So that's unfortunate for them. He has a torn UCL, I believe, in his wasn't like a finger or something. But yeah, he's going to be reevaluated in 3 to 4 weeks. So at least being Knicks fans, we hope that he does miss that game, which he probably will when they play him. But that's neither here nor there. We'll get to that at some point. But no, it's in his right elbow. So that's a little threatening. Torn UCL in your elbow is usually Tommy John in baseball. So I don't know if that's what he needs. I guess not, because I don't think he's going to miss that much time. And it's not like he's a pitcher. But still, that's a debilitating injury. Certainly can't play with that, especially when he just hurt it. He'll be reevaluated in 3 to 4 weeks, as I mentioned. And so it's going to be tough for the Clippers during this stretch because they're hovering in that middle ground. I really thought in the beginning of the year, I actually did bet on them to go under the win total. I think it was like 43.5. And
Nice.
just because I didn't feel that good about this Clippers team. And so I think they're still going to wind up right around that number. But this is a big blow. Guys like Reggie Jackson are going to have to step up. Luke Kennard's going to get a lot more minutes for them. And so the Clippers overall haven't been too disappointing relative to expectations, actually. It's really the Lakers, obviously, where the expectations were really high going into the season, and they haven't been able to live up to it.
Bob, let's go to the Lakers real quick, okay? They're 16-18. They've lost 5 games in a row.
Mm-hmm.
It's ugly. It's really ugly.
To say the least.
And we're at the point where we know what LA expects. Not just because of LeBron and AD, because even when LeBron and AD weren't in town, Lakers were still expected. No Kobe, no nobody. They were still expected to be relevant in the league. But now that they got Bron and AD and Russ, et cetera, we know what the expectations are. So where they're sitting currently, let's just say it's far from ideal. What's more disappointing? Where they're currently sitting in the standings, which is 16-18, lost 5 in a row, sitting in the 9th seed right now. What's more disappointing? Where their standing is currently at 9th in the West, or how this team has just looked on the court?
Definitely how they've looked, I would say, because they have clear spacing issues. We both thought Russell Westbrook wasn't a great fit with that team. And then the bigger problem is just that Anthony Davis now is sidelined with a sprained MCL on his knee. He's going to miss at least a month. That did happen about a week or 10 days ago. So at least we're already a week into that. But they need him badly, clearly. They're struggling mightily. And the thing is, it's nothing to do with LeBron or his age. Some people want to knock him and say, oh, he's had more injuries in the last few years, which is true. That is a fact. But since he's come back, he's been outstanding. He's still clearly one of the best players in the NBA, without a doubt. There's no question about it. But they clearly have some spacing issues. They don't shoot very well. They're terrible from the free throw line. Russell Westbrook just lays bricks. He still gets his stats, but he's just not an efficient scorer and really doesn't help them with the shooting that they need. They're about middle of the pack, actually, in like 3-point percentage, but they just don't look good, like you alluded to. Something's off with that team. With LeBron putting up these big numbers and great performances, they should be better than they are. It's not surprising when they lose to the Nets on Christmas Day, because we know the Nets are a great team. But they've also lost to Thunder twice this year, which is inexcusable. Can't be doing those. They've lost 5 in a row, as you mentioned. Still in the thick of things because the West honestly isn't as good as it used to be. But they need to get back on track, and they need to do it without Anthony Davis right now. So I don't know. There's no savior coming to help them. They can still get some guys off the COVID-19 list or back from injury, but at the same time, they just need to do something to spark it. And we talked to in one of the first podcasts about Frank Vogel maybe being, but I wouldn't be shocked if it happens anytime soon. If this slide continues, they're going to just do it for the sake of, we got to insert some energy or light a fire under the players, because they're not just going to like cut guys. They might look for trade offers, but right now they're just in a bad shape, in a bad way. I still think they're a playoff team. I still think Anthony Davis is going to come back, but yeah, they want to be at least a 3 or 4 seed. They don't want to be a 7 or 8 seed and have to play the Suns or the Warriors in a first round matchup.
Now with the Lakers, Bob, I think it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and what they're going to pull and what they're going to be able to pull. But when are they going to trade Russell Westbrook? Because at this point, it ain't working. It's clear. And I don't even blame him. We knew this. You've said it. I've said it. Everyone's talked about it. Everybody knew this wasn't a good fit. Everybody knew it. The Lakers made the move just to add the name, add another star, another scorer. I get it, but we knew it wasn't going to work. This was not what they're looking for. This was not the upgrade that they needed. So when are they going to move him? And when they inevitably do, what are they really going to get for him? Because his contract is still an albatross. Yes, he's a walking triple-double on any given night. But as you, myself, Greg, we've talked about this off the air in our chat. Kat came out recently and said that Westbrook chases stats. He's not wrong. We've known that about Westbrook for years now. Everyone knows it. When he goes all out for those rebounds, when there's his 4 other teammates are in the paint and he jumps over the big man to grab that rebound to get that triple-double, we know what he does. We get it. But I'm thinking Russell Westbrook is getting to the Ben Simmons range in terms of where his trade value is, how low it is at this point. Because like I was saying, he's a walking triple-double, but that ain't getting wins. They're not winning.
They're not.
I know LeBron only playing 20 games is a big part of it, and AD missing time is a big part of it, but they're not winning, okay? They're not. And like it's a matter of when. So, Bob, when is that move happening? When are they trading him, and where do you think his trade value stands at this point?
Well, Gunner's boss, who's commenting, said trade Russ, who's going to take him, and he's right. It's going to be hard to find a trade partner because if they're seeing that it's not working when he's playing with LeBron and at times when Anthony Davis has been healthy, not fitting in with a team with that much talent, who's going to be like, oh, man, we really want a 32 or 33-year-old point guard who is a terrible, inefficient shooter. Stats be damned. There's no contender that's going to be like, oh, he's, because they already see that with a contender, he's not helping them out. The only hope that Lakers have is maybe you look at a team like Indiana or Philadelphia, where Indiana's already stated they're going to try to rebuild. They have some disgruntled players that want out as well. After that news broke, Miles Turner feels like I want to, be more than just a role player. Sabonis wants to get out and win. So I look at Indiana as maybe potential trade destination. I don't see why they would want Russell Westbrook, but the only thing would be, all right, we can still sell tickets while he's there. He only has one more year left. Granted, it's a huge salary. It's over $40 million. And so I think it's going to be like $47 million next year, which is insane, but pretty much all the max contract players in that range these days. So I think maybe a team like the Pacers, if somehow the Lakers can convince them, hey, we can match salaries with him. You give us either Turner, obviously they wouldn't trade him for that, but they give a few picks, they trade that contract. I still don't think it's attractive for Indiana, but as far as possibilities, that's simply because they've already expressed a willingness to move all these players, to move some of their best players. And then I'm glad you brought up Simmons, because I know I kicked around that idea with you and Greg earlier in the week or last week, the trade machine. So everyone, if you want, check out that ESPN trade machine. It's great. I love playing around with it. And especially now that those guys who signed deals eligible to be traded, you can really explore more possibilities. But it would work in the trade machine if the 76ers were to trade Ben Simmons for Westbrook. Now, the reason for the Philadelphia 76ers doesn't make a ton of sense because, I don't know that it necessarily makes them a lot better. But at the same time, they're not going anywhere if Ben Simmons isn't playing. If Ben Simmons has said, I'm not playing one more game with the Philadelphia 76ers, then they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They really don't have many options, combined with the fact that you already said how low his trade value is. So now, do I necessarily see it happening? No, but I don't think I wouldn't put it at 0%. I would say there's a small percentage chance it could happen. Like I said, Simmons is dug in and never coming back to the Sixers. It would make way more sense for the Lakers because then you get a guy who, all right, again, can't shoot. You don't have to worry about him chucking bad shots. He's just going to try to distribute the ball. He's going to play much better defense than Russell Westbrook. And obviously, he's that much younger. So maybe with LeBron, Anthony Davis, and you can kind of mold him into a all-star again that's valuable. From the Sixers perspective, it's not pretty. You'd have to at least get some picks back, even though they probably won't be of much value because of the Lakers right now aren't great, but they're still not going to be one of the worst teams in the league. So you look at it from their perspective, hey, maybe Emick and just another player that they can use since Ben's not playing.
Now, I'm going to touch on what you just said because I'm grossed out by it, but we are falling behind a little bit on the comments, so I do want to get to some of them. One by Gunner's Boss, Shoot That J with Dan and Bobby H, sponsored by betting.net, and he's not wrong. I'm just gonna cycle through a bunch of these here, and Gunner's Boss has got some things that he wanted to share. Gunner's Boss says, you can't be better when you are the second best player, always in street clothes. AD was a bad move for the Lakers if you see what the players they let go are doing. And they did give up quite a haul. Lonzo was part of that deal, a couple of first-round picks. I think Hart was in that deal. Of course, Ingram. And we saw how these guys have developed so far for the Pelicans. Ingram is a go-to scorer. He's a walk-in bucket. Any night he can get you 20, which is pretty much what they would love to have right now, I think. A young guy like Ingram, who's got a solid all-around game, solid shot. Lonzo, who's really came into his own in New Orleans, away from the Lakers, away from the limelight and stuff like that. I don't know if they'd be better off with those guys right now, especially considering Lonzo's missed time already this season. And yes, Ingram's good, but I guess on that front, the best of ability is availability. At least you could say Ingram would be playing, whereas AD has missed time. So I don't hate it, but I mean, we got to be honest, man. If you have the opportunity to add a top 5 talent, which let's not sugarcoat it, AD has top 5 talent in the NBA right now. He's got top 3 talent if he could just stay healthy and stay on the court and play to his maximum capacity, which we've seen. It's not unheard of. I remember a time when AD was being talked about as being a top 3 fantasy pick, for example. So let's not make believe that getting AD was a bad move. They won a chip. I mean, that's what they play for. What are we even talking about? So just on that alone, I think them getting AD was the right move, especially considering that they already had Bron, and we know how these things go with LeBron. So it was a good get, but I get what you're saying. And a big one from Gunner's boss. I definitely want to get this one out there. Here we go. I wonder why Dame Lillard isn't getting the same kind of energy that Russ Westbrook has been given. He is shooting the same percentage from threes as Westbrook, 6% less from the field than Russ. He's having a worse year worst year of his pro career in terms of efficiency. And it gets cut off at the end there. So I'm going to take it off the screen and just read it out. Here we go. And continue that trend with a 5 of 15 and 5 turnovers show out last game in a blowout loss to a depleted Dallas Mavericks team. Y'all gotta be kidding me. Dude, the reason Lillard's not getting that same attention, which you're not wrong. I got him on my fantasy team. I am disgusted how I acquired him. Every year I do this to myself. I make a trade where I get taken advantage of.
I know what you probably wanted to say, but we got to.
I wanted to say something very, very aggressive and vulgar, but I'm not going to say that. Let's just say every year in fantasy basketball, I make one trade, just one. It's a guarantee every year, where I get taken advantage of against my will, and I hate it. At the time, I love the trade, and then afterwards, I get disgusted. And how I got Lillard, one of those. I traded CP3 and Julius Randle in like the second week of the season for Lillard and Gordon Hayward. It wasn't a terrible trade, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, Gordon Hayward's been playing great, so at least there is that.
It's not actually terrible.
I have Randle now, but
that's what I'm saying. It's not terrible, but I'm disgusted because CP3 is an MVP candidate, if not the number 1 or number 2 point guard in fantasy right now. But I digress. So I know what Lillard's going through. He missed time with an injury, disgusted me. And he's been shooting very poorly. You're not wrong. Okay, Gunner's boss, you're not wrong. But the reason he's not getting the same flack as Westbrook is because we know how good Lillard is, and he's on another level. Like, yeah, Westbrook is a walking triple-double, and that's impressive when you average a triple-double over a season. He's done it, I don't know, 3 times or something like that already?
Yeah.
So, yes, that's huge. That's impressive, but he's a stat chaser. Cat's not wrong. He's a stat chaser, and his brand of basketball doesn't win. At least with Lillard in Portland, they're not winning chips, but they're winning games. They've made playoff runs before. Westbrook not quite
right, and that's the thing. I hear what he's saying with Lillard. He is having a bad year, but Lillard garners more respect because we've seen him be the lead dog for a while, and his teams win because of it. Like you said, not chips, but they have made a Western Conference Finals within the last 5 years. They've made the playoffs regularly with him as the lead dog. After Kevin Durant left and Russell Westbrook did have that triple-double season, the first since, averaging triple-double since Oscar Robertson, and won the MVP. He wasn't able to take OKC very far. I don't even remember if they made the playoffs that year. I don't think they did. And if they did, they got bounced in the first round as like an 8 seed. So when he's been the lead dog, his teams have not been good at all. Whereas Damian Lillard has been able to get his teams to 3, 4 seeds, make a Western Conference Finals. And on top of that, the late game situations, which has a big factor in your legacy and how you're perceived. We've seen countless clutch, ice cold buckets, Dame time many times, where he hits a buzzer-beating 3 over Paul George to win a playoff series. We've seen plenty of other buzzer beaters by him to win games. He's come up big in crunch time. Whereas the biggest well-known knock on Russell Westbrook isn't even so much that he stat chases, because one thing that we always do give him credit for is that he does play games and he plays hard. He's a guy that doesn't sit out. He doesn't do load management. But late in games, he's the opposite of Damian Lillard. He throws up bricks. He makes the wrong decisions. He goes 100 miles per hour, barreling toward the basket, either looking for a foul or turning it over. So I think he's averaging 5 turnovers a game, which is easily leading the league this year. So those are big reasons why he gets a lot more flack than Damian Lillard. And especially for this year, it was thought, all right, he's going to take the Lakers to another level. But they're hovering around the same area that the Portland Trailblazers are, which should not be the case. The Lakers are much more talented.
Yeah, absolutely. And while you were talking, I cycled through some of the things Gunner's boss was saying. And thank you, Gunner's boss, for watching and commenting. The more comments we get, I will get to them as we go along through the show, and we will discuss them and shout you out. So keep them coming. A couple of things that he posted. One, which I like this. He said Russ would be great in Rucker. He's a playground legend playing pro basketball. Actually, that would be Sebastian Telfair. But I like where your head's at.
He would be a legend, though. Imagine Russ in those leagues, man. His athleticism.
Balling out there. Just give him the rock and get out of the way. And then he the next comment, he said that they would kill Russ in Philly. He doesn't think Joel Embiid would like him. Probably not. But hey, I mean, I hate the trade that Bob said. It was gross of Simmons and Danny Green for Westbrook, or Westbrook and a bacon, egg, and cheese, a couple picks, whatever. Yeah. I hate that. I hate it so much because on the surface you're like, ew. I mean, yeah, Ben Simmons can't shoot. I'm a better shooter than Ben Simmons right now, but his defense is elite. He's a good ball handler. He can play defense on 1 through 5. He's a solid piece, whereas Westbrook, I mean, we know what he is. And as we've beat this dead horse.
Nice.
As we've punched it lightly until it died. No, Russ doesn't win. The way he plays doesn't win. And moving on down to Gunner's boss. It might as well be the Gunner show at this point.
Yo, it might as well be.
He said he agrees that AD is a top 5 talent when he's on the floor, but he can't stay on the court. Listen, Gunner, you're not wrong, man. Before we keep going on with some more Gunner's comments and whatnot, I do want to remind everyone that we are powered by betting.net. Find the best place to bet for you. Betting.net offers expert end user reviews for every online sportsbook and casino in your state. Head on over to betting.net. And I do want to put 2 more of these up there. I'm going to finish with Gunner's last 2 comments here. This generation of athletes are all compilers. It's not like back in the day when it was more about championship over personal statistics. You are not wrong. That's very fair to say. I don't know so much more about championship back in the day than now. I think guys now are just as hungry to win chips as ever. But it is more common to find those selfish players who, if their teams aren't going to win chips, they're just going to go out there and do them, a la Russell Westbrook or Cat or Kevin Love when he was in Cleveland, stuff like that. Like guys who, they're good, but they're not championship winners on their own. They can't carry a team. They're not that 1A. They're good, but they're not quite.
Well, especially considering the explosion within the NBA, especially since the 80s, and how much salaries have ballooned. Back in the day, guys, of course, they were the best players who made the most money, but you made more money probably if you were on a championship team and you got that recognition and that respect as a winner. Now, with 30 teams and the huge salaries, yeah, guys are going to want to put up stats because that is how they get paid. Just being that winning player like a PJ Tucker. Now, granted, he's made a nice career for himself. He's had some good career earnings, but most players would much rather be a Charles Barkley who never wins a chip than, say, maybe not Draymond Green's the best example because he is like an elite defensive player as much as he's not a great offensive player, but someone that is like a Robert Horry. I think Robert Horry's even said, yeah, it's great that I'm known as Big Shot Bob and I've won 5 championships and I'm well revered and respected, but I would have honestly rather had a career like Patrick Ewing or Karl Malone or Charles Barkley, where I'm one of the best and I'm making the most money and I'm getting endorsements. So there are players like that. So I think he's definitely onto something that, yes, today's players are a little more selfish and do put up personal care sometimes more about personal statistics because that's going to get them much more rich and famous. It's just the facts.
And Gunner's Boss with some more fire here. If you don't have an all-star plus a solid player for Ben, don't call the 76ers. The Lakers don't have the pieces. I don't think they have the pieces either. And like Bob said, it would have to be something catastrophic, like Ben Simmons saying, I will never play in Philly again, no matter what. I'll sit for 4 years. Pay me. My contract's guaranteed. Y'all can figure it out. I'd rather retire or whatever. It would have to take something catastrophic. But even then, unless short of him saying, I want to go to the Lakers, I got to agree with Gunner's Boss here. I don't think they got what it takes to get a Ben Simmons, even with Simmons's trade value being impacted as far as it has so far. It would have to take something ridiculous. It would have to be a perfect storm of things. Yeah. Like when Harden wanted to go to Brooklyn and he got fat and he sat out and he said, I ain't going nowhere but Brooklyn, figure it out. They made it happen.
In a vacuum, that trade makes no sense. Yeah, Lakers trading Russell Westbrook for Simmons in a vacuum makes no sense. But once you add in all the external reasons, like Ben Simmons not playing there, seemingly not coming back to the team, that's the only reason you might kick that idea around, because also they're both max players. So Sixers have held their ground so far. Things can change, as we saw with the Nets, changing their mind on Kyrie Irving. But basically, it's not in a vacuum. There's all these external factors that are having a role in this. So if he's dug in and he's not willing to be traded, they're not, like they've already said, and he's right, they do want an all-star caliber player, but his trade value is really low. And they're unlikely to just accept 3 role players that reach Ben Simmons' contract. So with the way the NBA is structured, they have to take back some other kind of salary. So that's the only reason I pitch the idea of Russell Westbrook. So no, in general, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But when you add all those other factors, I don't think it's the craziest idea. I think it's unlikely, but I don't think anyone else has really come up with great trade ideas for Ben Simmons either, unless he's going to NBA Siberia like Sacramento.
Which at this point, I hope he does. I'm done with that guy. But it's funny because I know Greg was talking about, oh, well, why don't the Warriors trade for Simmons? Man, at this point, they would have to for even just to say this out loud. You'll see why I brought him up. But at one point, we're talking about, oh yes, to trade Simmons to Golden State for those rookies, Jonathan Kuminga and Moody or Wiseman, and sprinkle in Andrew Wiggins to match the contracts. I don't even think the Warriors would do Wiggins for Ben Simmons straight up right now. That's just the way their team is built. That's just the way it is. It's ugly out there. So
the way they're currently constructed, they don't really need to make a move. The best team in the West right now.
Well, no, I just brought them up because that was something that we were talking about in terms of like where Ben Simmons could go. Where's he going?
They certainly do have the pieces, so it definitely makes more sense than the Lakers when you look at just strictly what they can offer. Yes, I do think the Warriors are definitely a team that could be interested in a number of all-star caliber players, whether it's a Sabonis from the Pacers or Ben Simmons. But you're right. Like, they don't need to make that move, and they actually probably value Andrew Wiggins higher than he ever has been, because he's shown now that he's in the right situation with the right role where he doesn't have to be the number 1 or number 2 guy. He can score. He's playing much better defense, playing within their system. So I don't think they want to get rid of a wing like that. You do need a wing like that come playoff time.
And that's at this point, if you're the Warriors, playoff time is all you're really looking at and all you really care about. I do want to give another shout out to betting.net. Head on over to betting.net right now and see for yourself that betting.net makes it easy to find all of the legal online casinos and sports books in your state. We are powered by betting.net, as is the grueling truth. So on that note, Bob, is there any final touches, any last questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, anything special on that front you want to touch on before we sign off?
I do want to ask you one question, because you made it sound like it's inevitable, like when does it happen? But Do you believe Russell Westbrook does get traded by the trade deadline this year?
Yes. Yes, I do. If they don't make a move with Westbrook, and I don't know what move, I'm not even going to mention Buddy Hields of the world and stuff like that. I don't even think they get that at this point. If they go past the trade deadline with Russell Westbrook still on this team, they're not winning a chip. They're not going to finish with a top 4, 5, 6 seed, regardless of what goes on around them. And this is not going to look like the Lakers that we've come to expect under LeBron and AD. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly. They have to do it. They have to. They absolutely have to. It would blow my mind. It would blow my mind. It would be the perfect example of a team making a stupid decision and then doubling down on it. Like the girl who stays with the abusive boyfriend. It's like, oh my God, but Becky, he beat you. And she's like, no, it's fine. You know, I still have my CDs in his truck. We'll figure it out. It's like, no, you made the mistake. Just realize you made the mistake. You traded for a guy who you thought could fit, maybe add another dimension to your team. It ain't working. It's not going to work. You're either going to fire your coach and hope for the best, because they fired coaches for less. So you're going to fire Frank Vogel and move on, or you're going to trade Russell Westbrook. Making a move for a lesser piece, I don't even know whose, but a wing guy, a 3 and D guy, or a backup big or something like that, that's not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it for the fans. It's not going to cut it for LeBron. It's not going to cut it for this team who's trying to make a playoff push and trying to win another chip. It's not going to happen.
I do think they want to move him for sure, but yeah, it's just who's going to be that trade partner. You don't know, and the only teams that would make sense is one that's rebuilding and figures, all right, let's sell tickets, and then he'll be off the books after next year. That's the only thing that could really happen. No contender is going to want Russell Westbrook.
No contender is, and that's what I'm saying. You'll be hard pressed to find even a butt team that's going to want to take that contract and that type of a personality. Short of selling tickets, what's his value to you? It's ugly. It's ugly, because when you think of a guy who can average a triple-double and so explosive and such a presence on the court, it's disappointing to say, well, you can't even trade him for bacon, egg, and cheese right now.
And especially considering his age. A few years ago, he still had the value. That's why he was able to still be moved around the league. But now it's gotten to the point where teams just realize his deficiencies. He's not overcoming them. He's not learning from them. It's a shame. He's still a great player, still a Hall of Fame level player, but it's just not working out right now in LA. But I think they do want to trade him. I don't think they want to stay in the abusive relationship, as you alluded to. But it's just, who's that trade partner going to be? We have no idea. There's none that really make any logical sense at the moment, but things can change.
Round and round we go. Where the trade rumors stop, nobody knows. But yep. I want to let you guys know that betting.net is not just sports betting. Betting.net also compares the best online casinos. So sit back, relax, and play the top online slots, poker, and table games over at betting.net. And with that, ladies, gentlemen, people of all ages, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I am Dan.
I am Bobby.
And Bob, we're on Instagram and we're on Twitter. What's our handle?
That handle is DB Talking Sports. D as in Dan, B as in Bob. Hit us up. You can send us a DM. Let us know what you like to hear in the podcast. Leave comments like Gunner's Boss. We appreciate those. Give us some content for the podcast. We always have some coming into it, but it helps involve the listeners and the audience. We really appreciate it. Also, check out Dan's shows, whether they're on Grueling Truth or Dan and Bob Talking Sports. And I'm going to be doing my Bobby's Best Bets tomorrow. I sucked this past week, 1-4, but we'll go through that tomorrow. So check it all out. We put out a lot of content.
DB Talking Sports. The D is for Dan. The B is for Bob. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Shoot the J.
Shoot it.
Shoot it. Computer Blue.
Darlene Picky.
For Bobby Hunt, I'm Dan Kornhauser. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you next Tuesday. And Happy New Year, Bob.
Happy New Year, Dan, and Happy New Year to all the audience members out there. Don't get too drunk and be responsible. Don't drive if you're hammered. Take an Uber. Just play it smart.
Yeah, don't pull a Jason Kidd and drive your car drunk and hit a light pole.
Yeah, don't do that. We don't need those. We don't need a Jason Williams incident from way back in the day.
Romy, clown ass. All right, guys. Thanks again. Happy New